Hi, and welcome to ThePrint. My name is Karanjeet Kaur, and I'm a writer and an editor. Let's talk today about the Himalayas. The last thing that the 7 people who died in an avalanche at Zojila Pass would have seen was the sunshine. It was the sunshine, in fact, that killed them. Midday warmth is known to loosen the snowpack above the Srinagar-Leh highway, sending it down the slopes. It's also well known that March is an avalanche-prone month, and that the early morning hours, up to 10 a.m., are generally considered safer than afternoons. The avalanche occurred on 27th of March between 12:30 p.m. and 1 p.m. It bore down on a mix of heavy and light vehicles, even though advisories suggest that heavy vehicles be allowed only after light ones. Among the dead is a 10-year-old child, while a search for 2 more missing people continues. In about 4 weeks, the avalanche will be all but forgotten. The Indian summer will be upon us, and schools will break for the annual vacation. Hours will pass in the delirious search for finding a homestay at the last possible village in Uttarakhand or Himachal Pradesh. The season must go on because the mountains are calling. What is the death of 7 people when thousands of lives have been lost in the last few years? For generations, India's northern states were a salubrious escape from the hellish summer of the plains. As the tourism sector evolved over the last 25 years, access to the Himalayas exploded in an unprecedented way. 4x4 road journeys along sleek, many-laned highways replaced sleepy train rides. But for the last several years, the mountains have been sounding the alarm bells in the form of landslides, flash floods, snaking jams, and waste and water management crises. But none of the bad news seems to dent the tourist enthusiasm. Take Uttarakhand's Joshimath, for instance. The culturally significant historical town is the gateway to several religious and tourist sites, like Hemkund Sahib and Oli. In 2023, 700 buildings developed cracks and became unfit for residents. The town, situated on debris left by ancient landslides, also began to sink. But this wasn't the first time Joshimath was under the microscope. Cracks in its houses first appeared in the 1960s. In 1976, a state committee recommended that blasting of boulders be immediately stopped. They also suggested a pakka drainage system be developed and chopping trees be banned to prevent landslides. Joshimath, however, is now filled with luxury hotels. By 2023, the town's slow-motion sinking had become a cautionary tale about what unscientific construction on unstable mountain terrain actually looks like. By the following summer, the cautionary tale had vaporized, and the Char Dham Yatra, whose infrastructure expansion is one of the reasons geologists have been alarmed about these valleys for years, drew more than 50 lakh pilgrims. In 2012, that number was 4.5 lakh. Religious tourism is only one part of the immense strain on the mountains. During peak season last year, 67% of Himalayan tourist destinations had to ration water for residents to ensure that the hotels stayed supplied. The average tourist in the mountains consumes between 150 and 200 liters of water a day, while the average local uses between 30 and 40. In Shimla last June, 15,000 vehicles entered the city in a single day, even though its parking infrastructure can accommodate only 5,000. The tourist, however, is only the easiest scapegoat and most visible link in this chain, but is not the most consequential. The expansion of India's highway network into the Himalayas has been one of the more momentous infrastructure projects of the last 2 decades. The Himalayas are geologically young mountains. Their rock masses are fractured and prone to failure under the kind of stress that road building introduces. Slopes are routinely excavated at near vertical angles to save costs and space, destabilizing the hillside. Now, the effects of this destabilization are often seen only years later, maybe in a sinking village or a landslide following a mild shower. The original cost of the Parvanu-Solan 4-lane project was 934 crore rupees in 2015. However, as this report clarifies, by 2022, repeated landslides led to an escalation of costs by 65% to rupees 1,541 crore. In February 2023, the NHAI had to release a tender of 122 crore rupees for slope protection work at 32 locations along the route. The road that was built to open up the mountains is now, at considerable public expense, being protected from the mountains it opened up. But the uninterrupted march of development carries on. None of these calamities has prompted a rethinking of the model. Sanjay Austa, a former journalist who runs the Meenabag homestays in Himachal Pradesh, describes watching Chandratal in Spiti Valley get a road. Chandratal was once only accessible by a demanding trek, he told me. Some areas should be untouched. Chandratal remains one of my best trekking adventures because I had to work hard to get to a place of beauty. How else will you value that place? But the operating ideology that accessibility is an unqualified good and that no peak should be beyond reach turns the mountains into something to be consumed rather than reckoned with. It is also an ideology with powerful political backing. Austa, citing the example of Hatu Peak, says that we have to make peace with the fact that not all places can be accessible to all people. Austa also has to sometimes turn down visitors with mobility issues because the property, set in a permaculture organic orchard, can be reached only via a short trek. Meenabag is built around a traditional Katkuni structure, a technique of layering wood and stone without mortar that produced structures so well suited to the terrain that they were naturally earthquake resistant. For generations, a Katkuni structure was inherently eco-friendly, but that dynamic completely changes when you expand that aesthetic into a full-scale hotel. The problem, as Austa points out with some weariness, is that a commercial Katkuni hotel employs enormous quantities of deodar wood. Each of those trees takes 200 years to reach maturity. He said, the Katkuni is now a brand strategy for most commercial establishments. But building these at scale only encourages illegal mining and tree felling. Meenabag, thankfully, hasn't had to deal with the cataclysmic ecological disasters, but the effects of climate change are all too visible. Austa talks about the disappearance of amphibians from the farms around Ratnari, frogs and toads that once kept the beetle and slug population in check. Without them, pest pressure has exploded, and farmers have responded with pesticides, which have further decimated the bird population that might otherwise have helped. The Himalayan bulbul, whose beak is too small for most insects, has adapted by switching to cherries and is now considered a pest itself. The people who live in the mountains too have had to do their own share of adapting. Sandhya, name changed, who runs a small homestay in Himachal Pradesh, has watched her valley transform in 7 years from a green riverbank into an unbroken line of structures, commercial as well as residential. She told me, the valley is very narrow and cannot accommodate a lot of people. When we started the homestay, one car would pass by in 2 days. Now, trucks are carrying construction material all around, and I have a layer of dust in the homestay. Growing up, this was unheard of in the hills. Sandhya's village of about 40 houses now has 15 homestays, many built with the help of hefty loans taken by people who saw the post-COVID-19 tourism boom and move fast. But the devastating rains and landslides of 2023 and 2025 have struck hard. She said, one of my staff members lost her house in the 2023 floods. She decided to construct a pakka house after that. Then, in the July 2025 floods, her new house also got washed away. Sandhya's own homestay is under threat. Land surveyors in the area have recommended evacuating the hill because the slope is extremely unstable. She said, but nobody wants to leave their home. People want to hold on to whatever they have, despite the risk to life. The conversation around solutions, when it happens at all, tends to settle on responsible tourism. We must travel in smaller groups, we are told, and lower our footprint. Shikha Tripathi, a mountaineer and founder of Snowfox Escapes, a small trekking company, has spent years trying to build exactly this. For years, Tripathi has written about Himalayan trails like the Zojila Pass or Markha Valley Trek being overwhelmed by trekkers. She told me, Snowfox was born from this idea of finding solutions to the problems that I saw in the mountains. And one of them was this massive annoyance and impact caused by big groups of trekkers that I would come across. Tripathi says that there is a massive difference in learning when groups become smaller. But she is also honest about what the model cannot do. She said, I don't know if there is any tourism model for the Himalayas that is going to be sustainable to match the kind of demand that we have. Tripathi knows that any solution will require a hard cap on numbers. If you want to keep small numbers and low-impact groups, the cost of operating goes up. Now, if we combine it with who really gets to enjoy the mountains, Is it someone with a true love for nature or mountains, or is it someone who can afford to pay a small company that is strict on its responsible travel guidelines? I'm still a little divided on how we can get to the right audience without having price as a barrier. Responsible tourism, in other words, is largely tourism for those who can afford to be responsible. The mountains are open to everyone, but to love them well comes at a price. Tripathi has a lovely philosophy that she says the mountains taught her. See everything as if for the first time and as if for the last time. She means it as an instruction in wonder and a way of staying present in a precious landscape. But in the Himalayas of 2026, with its deadly slopes, the last time is no longer a metaphor. We have loved these mountains so hard and so carelessly that one final perfect view may be all that remains.